The early morning mist clung to Lake Willow like a gossamer veil, obscuring the water's edge where Michael Reginald Thompson's property line met the glassy surface. He stood on his expansive back deck, coffee mug in hand, watching as the first rays of sunlight began to burn away the fog. 30 years of legal battles, land surveys, and neighborhood politics had led to this moment, a confrontation that had been brewing longer than most of his neighbors had been alive. Michael wasn't just any homeowner. He was a retired civil engineer with a meticulous nature and an encyclopedic knowledge of property law that would make most lawyers nervous. The lakefront property had been in his family for generations, a fact he could trace back to land grants from the early 1900s. Every inch of the shoreline was etched into his memory, surveyed and documented with the precision of a military operation. The letter from Willow Shores Homeowners Association had arrived precisely 3 days ago, a crisp white envelope with an official-looking letterhead that made his fingers tense as he'd opened it. No trace of violation, it proclaimed in bold letters, demanding the immediate removal of his boat dock, claiming it extended beyond the association's arbitrarily defined acceptable shoreline boundaries. Michael chuckled softly, a sound that carried more steel and humor. They had no idea what was coming. The dock in question was a masterpiece of engineering and family history. Constructed of solid cedar and reinforced with steel supports, it had weathered decades of harsh lake conditions. His grandfather had first built it in 1952, and Michael had meticulously maintained and upgraded it over the years. To the HOA, it was a nuisance. To Michael, it was a legacy. He knew the neighborhood had changed. What was once a quiet lakeside community of original homeowners had transformed into a curated suburban landscape, where manicured lawns and uniform aesthetics were more important than individual property rights. Young couples and corporate professionals had moved in, armed with their HOA rulebooks and a bureaucratic zealousness that made Michael's blood simmer. The property survey was Michael's ace in the hole, a document so detailed and legally sound that it would make the HOA's claims look like a child's crayon drawing. Meticulously preserved in a fireproof safe, the original survey showed not just his property line, but the historical rights that came with the land. Michael had spent years collecting documentation, old county records, historical maps, even testimonies from elderly locals who remembered the original land divisions. As he finished his coffee, Michael allowed himself a small smile. The HOA believed they could bully him into submission, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. This wasn't just about a dock. This was about principles, property rights, and a lifetime of careful preparation. The legal battle was about to begin, and Michael Thompson was ready, more than ready. He walked back into his study, pulled out the carefully preserved survey, and began to make some phone calls. The Willow Shores HOA had just picked a fight they were going to regret. The first hearing of the Willow Shores HOA monthly meeting was nothing short of a theatrical performance. Michael arrived precisely at 7:00 p.m., his leather briefcase secured firmly under his arm, a crisp manila folder containing decades of documentation tucked inside. The community center's multipurpose room buzzed with nervous energy as board members and curious homeowners filled the chairs. Karen Reynolds, the HOA president, sat at the center table, a woman who had built her entire persona around enforcing every minutiae of the neighborhood's bylaws. Her perfectly pressed blazer and severe blonde bob screamed of bureaucratic authority. Michael knew the type well. He'd dealt with countless Karen Reynolds throughout his engineering career. "Mr. Thompson," she began, her voice dripping with manufactured civility, "the board has reviewed your current dock configuration, and it clearly violates Section 4.3 of our community guidelines regarding waterfront structures." Michael remained seated, his posture relaxed but alert. He had prepared for this moment like a general planning a critical military campaign. "I'm afraid you're mistaken," he responded calmly, "and I have documentation that will conclusively prove otherwise." What unfolded next was a masterclass in property law and historical documentation. Michael systematically dismantled the HOA's claims, presenting original land surveys, historical county records, and a chain of ownership that predated the HOA's very existence. Each document was a precision-crafted weapon, methodically destroying the board's arguments. The room grew increasingly uncomfortable. Homeowners who had initially looked at Michael with a mixture of curiosity and mild disdain now watched with growing fascination. Some began whispering, stealing glances between Michael and the visibly deflating HOA board members. Karen's perfectly maintained composure began to crack. Her fingers, adorned with an expensive French manicure, tapped nervously against the table. "These documents are complicated," she stammered. "We'll need time to review them." "Of course," Michael replied, a hint of a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "I've made copies for each board member. I'm sure you'll find them quite comprehensive." The meeting devolved into a chaotic mix of hushed conversations and nervous glances. Michael had done more than defend his dock. He had exposed the HOA's fundamental misunderstanding of property rights. But Michael knew this was just the beginning. The HOA would not go down without a fight, and he was prepared for a long strategic battle. As he gathered his documents and walked out of the community center, he could feel the weight of dozens of eyes following him. His smartphone buzzed. It was his attorney, Mark Grayson, a pit bull of a lawyer who specialized in property disputes. "I heard the meeting went well," Mark's text read. "Ready for the next phase?" Michael's response was immediate and succinct. "Just getting started." The real war was about to begin, and Michael Thompson was exactly where he wanted to be, one strategic move ahead of his opponents. The legal battle escalated quickly. Within weeks of the contentious HOA meeting, Michael found himself facing an official cease and desist order, accompanied by a formal complaint filed with the local municipal court. The HOA had hired Richard Hartman, a notoriously aggressive real estate attorney known for bulldozing through property disputes. Mark Grayson wasn't intimidated. During their strategy session, spread across Michael's expansive home office, legal documents covered every available surface like a paper mosaic of property law. "They're trying to intimidate you," Mark explained, tracing his finger along a complex land survey. "But we've got something they don't expect." The unexpected came in the form of a historic preservation angle. Michael's property wasn't just a simple lakefront lot. It was part of a larger historical land grant that predated the HOA's incorporation by nearly a century. His grandfather's original dock wasn't just a structure. It was a historical landmark that told the story of the region's development. Local historians became an unexpected ally. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a respected historian from the County Historical Society, took a keen interest in Michael's case. Her preliminary research revealed that the Shoreline area had unique historical significance with land rights that were far more complex than the HOA realized. The media caught wind of the story. What had started as a neighborhood dispute transformed into a David versus Goliath narrative that captured local attention. A local news crew arrived one crisp morning, their van rolling up Michael's carefully maintained driveway. The reporter, a young and ambitious journalist named Jake Martinez, saw the potential for a compelling story about property rights and historical preservation. "Mr. Thompson," Jake asked during the interview, "how do you respond to the HOA's claims that your dock violates community standards?" Michael's response was measured but powerful. "This isn't about a dock," he explained, his engineering background evident in every carefully chosen word. "This is about understanding the true history of our community, about respecting property rights that extend far beyond a few pages of recent bylaws." The interview went viral on local social media channels. Suddenly, Michael wasn't just a stubborn homeowner, he was becoming a local folk hero. Behind the scenes, the legal maneuvering intensified. Mark Grayson filed a countersuit, challenging the HOA's authority and citing multiple historical precedents. Each document was a strategic weapon, carefully crafted to expose the weaknesses in the HOA's position. Karen Reynolds, the HOA president, found herself under increasing pressure. What had begun as a simple enforcement action was now a public relations nightmare. Board members began to splinter, some questioning the wisdom of pursuing the case against Michael. As winter approached, the battle lines were clearly drawn. Michael knew the fight was far from over, but for the first time he felt the momentum shifting in his favor. The dock, his grandfather's legacy, stood resolute against the lake's winter backdrop, a silent testament to the fight yet to come. His phone rang. It was Mark. "We got them on the ropes," the lawyer said, a rare note of excitement in his professional tone. "They're starting to realize they might have picked the wrong fight." Michael looked out over the lake, a slight smile crossing his face. The real battle was just beginning. The courtroom felt like a pressure cooker on the day of the preliminary hearing. Michael sat beside Mark Grayson, his documents meticulously organized, each file a weapon in their legal arsenal. The county courthouse, with its imposing marble columns and hushed atmosphere, seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. Judge Eleanor Martinez was not someone to be trifled with. A no-nonsense jurist with 40 years of experience, she had seen her share of neighborhood disputes, but something about this case intrigued her from the moment the files crossed her desk. Richard Hartman, the HOA's attorney, opened with what he believed was a knockout punch. "Your Honor," he proclaimed, his tailored suit crisp and expensive, "this is a clear-cut case of zoning violation. The homeowner has consistently and flagrantly disregarded community standards." Mark Grayson's response was surgical. He began by presenting a comprehensive timeline of land ownership, tracing Michael's property rights back to an original land grant from 1897. Each document was a precision-crafted piece of evidence, telling a story far more complex than a simple dock dispute. The turning point came unexpectedly. Dr. Elena Rodriguez took the stand as an expert witness, her testimony transforming the case from a mere property dispute into a historical preservation narrative. She detailed the significance of Michael's shoreline, explaining how the dock was more than a structure. It was a living piece of local history. "This dock," Dr. Rodriguez explained, her voice calm and authoritative, represents a continuous line of maritime tradition in our region. It's not just a personal property issue, but a historical artifact that tells the story of our community's development. Judge Martinez leaned forward, her interest visibly piqued. The HOA's attorneys shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Meanwhile, the media circus outside the courthouse had transformed Michael into an unlikely local hero. Neighbors who had previously sided with the HOA now questioned the organization's motives. Social media was ablaze with support, with hashtags like hashtag #DocRights and hashtag Property Justice trending locally. Karen Reynolds, the HOA president, looked increasingly isolated. Board members who had once stood united now avoided her gaze. The organization's aggressive stance was unraveling in real time. During a brief recess, Michael received an unexpected visitor. Jake Martinez, the local reporter who had first covered his story, approached with a knowing smile. "This is bigger than just your dock now," he said quietly. "You're fighting for something much larger." Michael knew he was right. This had become a battle about more than just a piece of lakefront property. It was about individual rights, historical preservation, and the overreach of homeowners associations. As the hearing resumed, Mark Grayson delivered a closing argument that was nothing short of masterful. He methodically dismantled the HOA's claims, presenting evidence so compelling that even most skeptical observers could see the truth. Judge Martinez's final words that day were measured but loaded with significance. This court finds that the plaintiff has not demonstrated sufficient grounds to challenge the existing waterfront structure. She declared, her gavel creating a definitive punctuation to months of conflict. Outside the courthouse, a crowd erupted in applause. Michael remained composed, but Mark could see the subtle triumph in his client's eyes. They had won more than just a legal battle. They had made a statement. The dock would remain, and with it, a piece of history was preserved. The lake sparkled under the late summer sun, Michael's dock standing proudly against the shoreline, a symbol of resilience and vindication. What had begun as a simple dispute had transformed into a landmark case that would be discussed in local legal circles for years to come. The aftermath of the court victory was more complex than Michael had anticipated. The Willow Shores HOA had been fundamentally changed. Karen Reynolds had resigned in disgrace, her reputation shattered by the public embarrassment of the legal defeat. Several board members who had supported the aggressive action against Michael had been replaced by more reasonable individuals who understood the importance of property rights and historical context. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's involvement had yielded unexpected fruit. The County Historical Society, inspired by the case, launched a comprehensive project documenting early lakefront properties. Michael's documentation became a cornerstone of this historical preservation effort, with his meticulous records serving as a model for future historical research. The local media continued to follow up on the story. Jake Martinez, the reporter who had first covered the dispute, won a regional journalism award for his in-depth reporting. He remained in touch with Michael, occasionally dropping by for coffee and updates. Mark Grayson's law firm saw an unexpected boost in clients. Property owners across the region, inspired by Michael's stand, sought legal advice about their own rights against overzealous HOAs. The firm began offering workshops on property rights and historical land claims. Michael himself had become something of a local legend. Neighbors who had once viewed him as a troublemaker now sought his advice. He found himself invited to community meetings, asked to speak about property rights and historical preservation. The dock, once a point of contention, was now a point of pride for the community. On the anniversary of the court decision, a small ceremony was held. The Historical Society placed a commemorative plaque near the dock, recognizing its historical significance. Michael's grandchildren listened intently as their grandfather recounted the story, a tale of persistence, research, and standing up for one's rights. The dock remained unchanged. Each plank, each support beam told a story of Michael's grandfather who first built it, of the decades of maintenance, of the legal battle that had cemented its place in local history. It was more than just a structure. It was a testament to the power of knowing one's history and standing firm in the face of bureaucratic overreach. As the sun set over Lake Willow, Michael sat on the dock, a cup of coffee in hand. The water lapped gently against the wooden supports, a quiet reminder of all that had transpired. He thought about persistence, about family legacy, about the importance of understanding one's roots. The dock had won, and so had he. In the distance, a boat cut across the lake, a silent witness to a battle that had become local folklore. Michael allowed himself a small smile. Some fights are worth fighting, not just for oneself, but for the principle of the matter.